The coffee was perfect this Sunday morning. Strong, black, exactly how I liked it after a long week. The house, however, felt wrong. Not just quiet. Sunday mornings were often deceptively calm before the teenage storm of my stepdaughter Stella usually hit. No, this was a different kind of quiet. A heavy, cloying silence that prickled the back of my neck. Something was fundamentally off. I stood motionless in the archway to the living room, mug warming my hands, senses on high alert, scanning the familiar scene. Books slightly askew on the shelves, Delilah's favorite throw draped over the armchair, dust motes dancing in the slanted morning light. Everything superficially normal. Yet, the wrongness persisted, an invisible hum beneath the surface. My eyes drifted towards the fireplace, the heart of our home, adorned with the gallery of moments we called a family. And then I froze. The air thickened, turning to sludge in my lungs. The centerpiece, the large, expensive frame holding our Yellowstone photo from last summer, the one Delilah insisted on, despite Stella's epic eye-rolling and my own reservations about matching fleeces. It was damaged? No, not damaged. Altered. My heart began a frantic, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I took a hesitant step closer, then another, drawn by a horrifying magnetism. The vibrant backdrop of the geyser basin was still there. Delilah's tight smile, Stella captured mid-grimace. But the space beside them, where I had stood, arms slung awkwardly around Stella's shoulders, beaming with a tentative pride? It was empty, a clean, precise cutout silhouetted against the painted landscape. Gone. As if I'd never been there. As if I were a figment of my own imagination. A wave of dizziness washed over me. It's a mistake. Some rational part of my brain tried to argue. Maybe the photo slipped? But denial evaporated as my gaze flew, wide with dawning horror, across the rest of the wall. The photo from Stella's freshman year honor roll ceremony, her rare, genuine grin, me giving a goofy thumbs up beside her, my thumbs up remained, floating bizarrely next to an empty space where my proud face had been. The Christmas photo from 2 years ago, all of us tangled in fairy lights, my section meticulously removed, leaving Delilah and Stella appearing to lean against thin air. Birthday parties, beach trips, even mundane candids, each one systematically violated, my presence surgically excised, leaving behind only the jagged outlines of my absence, ghostly reminders of moments that no longer included me. This wasn't impulsive anger. This required time, patience, a sharp blade, and a chillingly steady hand. The intention behind it screamed louder than any words could. It was a calculated act of erasure, a symbolic execution. The coffee in my mug was stone cold now, forgotten. My hand, I realized distantly, was trembling. Or perhaps it was the floor beneath me. Who? Why? The questions hammered against my skull, unanswered. Just then, the telltale click of a bedroom door opening upstairs shattered the oppressive silence. Stella's. Her footsteps were soft on the landing carpet, hesitant. Then, they stopped. A long, weighted pause hung in the air. She knew I was down here. She had to know I'd seen the desecrated gallery wall. My breath caught in my throat. What would she do? What would she say? After a moment that stretched into an eternity, her steps resumed, deliberately slow, measured. She appeared at the top of the stairs, phone already in hand, held up like a shield, eyes resolutely fixed on the screen. She descended without a single glance in my direction, her teenage nonchalance radiating a terrifying coldness. It wasn't indifference. It was a performance of indifference designed to wound. She walked past me, heading for the kitchen, the scent of her fruity shampoo mocking the acrid taste of betrayal in my mouth. Morning, I managed to force out, my voice a rough, unfamiliar croak. The silence that followed was absolute, profound, stretching between us like a chasm. It wasn't just quiet. It was the deafening roar of rejection, the final, brutal confirmation of what those empty spaces on the wall had already told me. I had been disappeared, and the architects of my vanishing were standing right here, breathing the same suffocating air. The charade was over. The oppressive silence after Stella's calculated snubbing bled into the rest of the morning. Breakfast felt like navigating a minefield. Every mundane sound, the scrape of a knife on toast, the clink of Delilah's spoon against her mug, seemed unnaturally loud, amplifying the vast, chilling emptiness left by my erasure from the family. Photos. Delilah maintained a facade of strained normality. her movements jerky, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. Stella remained welded to her phone, a fortress of teenage indifference. 3 years. The number pulsed in my head. 3 years of meticulously navigating the step-parent tightrope. Had it meant nothing? Memories flickered, helping Stella conquer fractions late into the night, the shared triumph palpable. The time she hesitantly asked me for advice about a friendship drama, bypassing Delilah, the quiet pride swelling in my chest when she'd laughed, genuinely laughed, at one of my terrible dad jokes. These weren't just moments, they were milestones, fragile bridges built over the chasm left by Miles, her biological father, the charming ghost whose reappearances inevitably heralded emotional disaster. I had allowed myself to believe those bridges were strong. Now, facing those empty photo frames, that belief felt naive, almost foolish. The shift in Stella, hitting 16, had been jarring. The warmth vanished, replaced by monosyllables and weaponized eye rolls. I'd tried to dismiss it as typical teenage angst, but the targeted nature of her resentment felt intensely personal. Delilah waved away my concerns. She's just being a teenager, Thomas. Don't make it about you. But it felt about me. The first undeniable crack came last week. Stella, drowning in a chemistry assignment, radiated misery. My offer to help was met with a verbal slap. "Stop pretending you care," she'd spat, venom dripping from the words. "You're not my real dad." It wasn't the first time she'd used that line, but the cold, deliberate cruelty in her tone was new. And Delilah? Standing mere feet away, she heard every syllable. Her reaction? Nothing. A complete lack of response. She didn't defend me, didn't correct Stella, didn't even acknowledge the exchange. She just continued wiping the counter with meticulous focus, her silence a deafening act of betrayal. It wasn't neutrality, it felt like a tacit endorsement. My stomach plummeted. It wasn't just Stella pushing me away. Delilah was refusing to hold the line. After that, the house became thick with unspoken hostility. It was in the small things. Dishes left just beside the dishwasher, doors closing with unnecessary force, conversations abruptly halting when I entered a room, only to resume in whispers moments later. It felt like psychological warfare waged through microaggressions. Delilah became adept at deflection, offering empty platitudes, "Give her space, it'll blow over," while avoiding any real discussion, any sign of partnership. It was isolating, infuriating. Then came last night's dinner, the inevitable detonation. The air was already charged. Stella immediately erected a wall around herself with her phone, thumbs flying. Our simple rule, no phones at the table, a small bastion of family connection, was blatantly ignored. I waited. Delilah said nothing. "Stella, phone away, please," I said, keeping my voice level. It was the spark to the powder keg. She slammed the phone down, the sharp crack echoing. "Oh my God," she exploded, shoving her chair back violently. "Why are you always policing me? Why can't you just leave me alone?" Her voice climbed, high and ragged with fury. "Stella," I began, trying to salvage the situation. "I'm just—" "Trying to what?" she shrieked, leaning forward, eyes blazing. "Play dad? I already have one. A real one. Why are you even here? Why don't you just disappear?" The word raw and ugly hung between us. Nobody asked you. Nobody wants you. It's pathetic. The sheer hatred stunned me silent. My gaze flew to Delilah, my wife, my supposed partner, desperately searching her face for some sign of solidarity, some shared outrage. Anything. Instead, I watched in disbelief as she slowly, deliberately placed her fork down. Her expression was terrifyingly blank, devoid of emotion. She stared at a point somewhere beyond my shoulder. And then, in a voice that was unnervingly calm, chillingly detached, she delivered the coup de grace. "Maybe she's right, Thomas." A pause that felt like ice forming in my veins. Maybe we'd all be better off if you did. We. The word was a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. Not anger, not frustration. Just a cold, quiet, devastating agreement. The floor dropped out from under me. The life I thought we were building together shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Delilah's words, "better off," echoed, sucking the air from the room. It wasn't anger, just a cold, final judgment. Nothing remained. I stood feeling detached, numb. "Okay," I repeated flatly. Stella flinched, maybe wanting a fight I wouldn't give. "I heard you both," I said, turning towards the stairs. Their frantic whispers followed me up, but no calls to return. Upstairs, A strange calm persisted as I packed. My hands were steady, movements methodical. Folding shirts, grabbing toiletries. The numbness was a shield against the shattering reality. I zipped the duffel, the sound unnaturally loud. Downstairs, Delilah waited, arms crossed. A statue carved from conflicting emotions. Anger, guilt, maybe even fear. So, that's it? Her voice was tight, strained. You're just leaving? Running away is your answer? The accusation felt absurd coming from her. You said, I replied evenly, stopping short of the door, refusing to engage in a fight that was already lost. You'd be better off. We'd be better off. I'm respecting that decision. My keys and wallet were already in my pocket. That's not... I didn't mean... She began faltering, the words dying as pride, or perhaps the horrifying realization of what she'd done, silenced her. She couldn't take it back. We both knew it. I'll be at Ryan's, I stated, picking up the duffel bag. I'll figure out something more permanent later. I paused at the front door, hand on the cold metal knob, and allowed myself one last look back. One final necessary twist of the knife, she'd already plunged into my back. You know, Del, I said, my voice low but carrying in the tense silence, Stella saying those things. It cut deep. But hearing you agree with her, validate that cruelty? I shook my head slowly, letting the full weight of the betrayal settle between us. That didn't just cut. It broke something. Irreparably. I opened the door and walked out into the night, not looking back, the click of the lock echoing behind me like a final punctuation mark. The drive was autopilot. Numbness was my co-pilot. Ryan's porch light was a small beacon in the sudden darkness of my life. He opened the door before I even knocked, took one look at my face, the bag, and just nodded grimly. No questions, no pitying looks. He clapped a hand briefly on my shoulder, a silent gesture of solidarity that meant more than any words could, and led me straight to his guest room. True friendship. Inside the blessedly impersonal room, the dam finally threatened to break, but exhaustion won. I powered off my phone, silencing the inevitable storm I knew was coming, and swallowed a sleeping pill from my emergency kit, praying for oblivion. Morning light filtered through unfamiliar blinds. For a fragile moment, confusion reigned. Then reality crashed back in. The fight, the words, the empty photo frames. The hollow ache in my chest was immediate, visceral. With dread coiling in my stomach, I finally turned my phone back on. It exploded. A relentless, frantic barrage of vibrations, pings, and screen flashes assaulted my senses. 13 missed calls. 13, 8 from Delilah, escalating in frequency. 3 from Stella, surprisingly. 2 from my sister Quinn, undoubtedly alerted and ready for battle. 27 text messages scrolled down the screen in an overwhelming flood. 4 new voicemails. The sheer volume, the desperation after their chilling dismissal last night, felt jarringly wrong. What could possibly have changed so drastically overnight? I stared at the screen, overwhelmed, heart pounding with a new kind of anxiety. I couldn't bring myself to listen or read. Not yet. The wounds were too raw. Later that morning, attempting to force down some coffee Ryan had made, he hesitated, then slid his phone across the table, his expression cautious. Dude, you need to see this. On the screen, a Facebook photo. My blood ran cold. It was Miles, Stella's biological father, grinning like a Cheshire cat, arms slung casually around Stella outside a trendy local restaurant. Tagged. 2 weeks ago. The timing slammed into me with the force of a physical blow. 2 weeks ago. Right when Stella's attitude shifted. Right before the photo desecration. Miles. The charming black hole who hadn't paid child support in years. Who specialized in grand reappearances followed by devastating abandonments. It wasn't random teenage angst. It was him. Pulling the strings, poisoning her mind. Suddenly, Delilah's confusing texts made a different kind of sense. The anger morphing into concern, her latest urgent plea, "There's something you need to know. About Stella. About him. Please call." Stella's own cryptic messages. "Things aren't what you think." Just as this sickening realization solidified, my sister Quinn arrived, kicking the door shut behind her, bypassing greetings. "Saw Stella yesterday," she announced grimly. "At the mall. With Miles." She looked... God, Thomas. She looked hopeful. Like a kid waiting for Santa Claus. He's been messaging her for months, apparently. Found her online. feeding her God knows what promises. My stomach twisted violently. I numbly opened Stella's Instagram. The latest post proudly displayed the picture with Miles. Caption, real family time. Blessed. My world wasn't just broken. It had been deliberately, maliciously rearranged by the very phantom I thought we'd finally escaped. The game had changed entirely. The antiseptic smell of Riverside High seemed to amplify the chilling conversation. Ms. Anderson, Stella's guidance counselor, laid out the facts with professional gravity, but her eyes held genuine concern. Withdrawal from all AP courses, Thomas. Submitted yesterday. The form slid across the desk, felt like indictment papers. AP Calc, AP Lit, AP Bio. Each represented countless hours of Stella's hard work, her fierce determination to build a future far removed from the instability Miles represented. She's also dropping student council and French club, Ms. Anderson continued. She cited plans to transfer schools next semester, requesting transcripts for 3 institutions in California. My heart hammered against my ribs. California. Her father, Ms. Anderson confirmed my unspoken dread, is apparently launching a tech startup there. Stella mentioned needing to be closer to family and alluded to family investment opportunities that would supposedly fund her entire education. Family investors. The predatory echo of Miles's past scams was deafening. He wasn't just clouding her judgment, he was actively dismantling the future she'd meticulously planned, targeting her college fund with the same ruthless tactics he'd used before. I showed Ms. Anderson the text from Delilah confirming Miles was pressuring Stella for the money. This provides crucial context, she sighed. Her reasoning felt rehearsed, almost desperate. I suspected external pressure. This is deeply concerning, Thomas. The validation offered cold comfort against the rising tide of protective fury. I drove home in a haze of anger and fear. Delilah met me at the door, her face a mask of panic. Hey, he asked her for the college fund, she blurted, confirming my worst fears. All of it. For the startup. He's filled her head with nonsense about guaranteed millions. I tried to warn her, Thomas. I swear I did. But she turned on me. Accused me of being jealous. Can you believe it? Jealous! She actually screamed that at least he believed in her dreams. Her voice broke. Why, Delilah? Why didn't you call me the second you knew he was back? She leaned heavily against the doorframe, shame and exhaustion warring in her eyes. I thought I could handle it, she whispered, the confession laced with self-recrimination. Keep him away. Protect her. I thought if I just managed it carefully, then you two fought. She said those horrible things and I panicked. I thought if I pushed back then, she'd run straight to him and I'd lose her completely. So I sided with her. Oh God, Thomas, I made everything so much worse. Her regret seemed profound, but the consequences of her fear were already playing out. The front door opened and Stella walked in. Seeing me, she froze. The expensive jacket, the careful makeup, they couldn't hide the shadows under her eyes, the brittle tension in her posture. Miles's superficial gloss couldn't mask the turmoil beneath. What are you doing here? She asked, her voice sharp, defensive. Dropping AP classes, Stella? I kept my tone deliberately calm, factual. Dropping everything you worked for? Transferring to California based on promises from a man who disappears for years at a time? What happened to Stanford? What happened to your dream, the one you built? She flinched but held her ground. Plans change, she mumbled, refusing to meet my eye. Dad says, Miles says, I corrected firmly. You don't know him. He has connections. This startup is real. It's guaranteed, she retorted, parroting his lines, though her voice lacked conviction. Guaranteed? I echoed, opening my laptop. Like the classic car dealership that bankrupted his partner was guaranteed? Or the food truck franchise that vanished overnight? Or the investment that vaporized your mother's savings? I turned the screen to face her. I did some research after my chat with Ms. Anderson. This is Miles's reality, Stella. No registered business. A credit report that reads like a disaster novel. And 3, count 'em, 3, active lawsuits from his last guaranteed venture. I clicked open the final file, including this one, filed by the grandmother of his previous stepdaughter. Seeking to recover the college fund, he convinced her to invest. Stella stared at the screen, her face paling dramatically. She scrolled, her breath hitching. I watched her facade crumble in real time. the forced confidence dissolving into disbelief, then dawning horror. The lawsuit detailing Miles's betrayal of another young woman, mirroring her own situation so closely, seemed to land the hardest. A choked sob finally escaped her lips. He he said, she whispered, tears finally breaking free, smudging her perfect makeup. He said he'd changed. He was sorry. He wanted to make up for everything. He promised we could finally be a real family. The words were punctuated by gut-wrenching sobs. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a devastating mix of anguish and betrayal. He made me. He said I had to prove I was choosing him. He said you were the reason he stayed away. Because you stole his place. The sheer calculated cruelty of his manipulation hung heavy and poisonous in the air between us. Delilah rushed towards her, murmuring comfort. But Stella violently recoiled, shaking her head, unable to accept solace from the mother who hadn't protected her. I knew, Stella choked out, hugging herself tightly. Deep down, I knew it felt wrong, too easy. But I wanted to believe him so badly. Her phone buzzed insistently on the counter. Miles, no doubt. She looked at it as if it were venomous before slapping her hand down on the screen to silence it. I have to go, she stammered, turning blindly and fleeing upstairs. I need to think. The slam of her door echoed the shattering of her world. Delilah and I were left in the ruins. That night involved hours of raw, painful conversation, acknowledging fears, mistakes, the long road ahead to rebuild any semblance of trust. As I gathered my things again, preparing to return to Ryan's, my phone lit up. A text from Stella. I messed up. Everything's messed up. Can we talk? I mean, really talk? Not about Miles or money. Just, remember ice cream after dance class? Could we maybe do that? I know I don't deserve it, but a fragile olive branch, a flicker of hope in the suffocating darkness. Maybe, just maybe, the path back hadn't completely disappeared. The late-night meeting at Sal's ice cream parlor felt surreal. Stella sat opposite me, picking listlessly at her melting mint chocolate chip. The bravado gone, replaced by a raw vulnerability I hadn't seen since she was 13. She talked for hours, the words tumbling out, about Miles's relentless charm offensive, the calculated manipulation, the way he preyed on her deepest insecurities, and her desperate longing for a father figure. She confessed how he'd coached her on what to say to Delilah and me, how he'd framed me as the obstacle to their perfect future. Then came the crucial piece. Eyes downcast, she mumbled, He kept pushing me to talk to my friends about the startup, show them the website, tell them how much money their parents could make if they got in early. He even wrote down what I should say. She pulled out her phone, hesitantly showing me group chats where Miles, under the guise of helping Stella network, was directly soliciting investments from minors, dangling promises of quick riches, securities fraud, targeting kids through his own daughter. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place, solidifying my cold fury into icy resolve. This wasn't just about protecting Stella anymore. It was about stopping a predator before he ruined more lives. Stella, I said carefully, keeping my voice even despite the rage simmering beneath. What he's doing, getting kids to ask their parents for investment money based on false promises, it's not just wrong, it's illegal. Seriously illegal. Her eyes widened as the implications sank in. That night, after taking a shaken but resolute Stella home, the calls began. Quinn's friend at the SEC, Ryan's contact in the DA's office, armed with Stella's testimony and the digital evidence she reluctantly forwarded, texts, emails, the fraudulent prospectus Miles had her circulating, a plan began to form. A trap. The big announcement dinner Miles had orchestrated was at La Mirage, predictably expensive, ostentatiously flashy. He'd booked a private room, clearly intending to impress not just Stella, but the handful of her friends' parents he'd also invited, his next potential marks. The air crackled with false bonhomie. Miles was in his element, holding court, oozing counterfeit charm, dropping names of Silicon Valley connections. Delilah sat beside me, pale but composed, playing her part. Stella, seated next to Miles, looked like a hostage trying to smile, picking at her salad. I felt a surge of protective anger towards her, quickly suppressed. Tonight required precision, not emotion. Miles launched into his pitch after the appetizers, painting grandiose visions of his non-existent tech startup, promising astronomical returns, weaving lies with the effortless grace of a seasoned sociopath. He slid glossy, fake investment portfolios across the table, He turned to Stella, his voice dripping with paternal pride. And my amazing daughter, my primary partner, is ready to commit her future to ours. Aren't you, sweetie? Setting an example. He produced a pen and a document, placing it pointedly in front of her, her college fund signing papers. This was it. The moment. Actually, Miles, I interjected, my voice cutting cleanly through his monologue, causing heads to turn. Before Stella signs anything, there are a few other interested parties who'd like to join this investment opportunity. On cue, the doors to the private room swung open. Two men and a woman in sharp, unassuming suits stepped inside, moving with quiet, unmistakable authority. Federal agents, state investigator. Their eyes scanned the room, settling instantly on Miles. His confident smile faltered, confusion flickering across his face. "Who the hell are you?" he blustered, trying to regain control. "Sir," the lead agent said calmly, stepping forward, flashing a badge, "we have a warrant for your arrest. Securities fraud, wire fraud, operating an unlicensed investment scheme." Miles's face drained of all color. The transformation was instantaneous. From smug predator to cornered rat. Pure terror replaced the arrogance. "This is insane. A misunderstanding," he stammered, eyes darting wildly around the room, searching for an escape. He shoved his chair back violently, knocking over a glass of water, and made a desperate bolt for the side door. He didn't make it 3 steps. Restaurant security, likely alerted, materialized instantly, blocking his path. The federal agents were on him in seconds, hands expertly pinning his arms behind his back. The sharp click of handcuffs echoed in the stunned silence. "No, you can't!" Miles struggled futilely, his expensive suit bunching awkwardly. His eyes locked onto Stella, his expression shifting sickeningly into one of wounded betrayal. The ultimate manipulation tactic. "Sweetie," he cried out, his voice cracking. "Tell them. This is all a misunderstanding. Tell them I'm your father. Tell them." All eyes turned to Stella. She stood up slowly, trembling slightly, but her spine was straight, her gaze unwavering as she met his desperate plea. She took a deliberate step towards me, reaching out and taking my hand, her grip surprisingly firm. "My father," she said, her voice clear and resonant, cutting through the tension, "is right here." She squeezed my hand, turning back to face the handcuffed, crumbling figure of Miles. "And he," she finished, her voice filled with a newfound, steely resolve I'd never heard before, "just watched you get exactly what you deserve." The agents began leading a now whimpering, defeated Miles away. The trap had sprung. The monster was caged. The chaos in the private dining room subsided into a stunned, echoing silence as the agents led a sputtering, defeated Miles away. The other parents, potential victims moments before, exchanged wide-eyed, shaken glances. Stella's hand was still gripping mine, a small anchor in the swirling aftermath. Without a word, the 3 of us, me, Stella, and a visibly pale Delilah, turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving the wreckage of Miles's grand illusion behind us. The news exploded, of course. Investigators uncovered a web of deceit spanning 3 states, millions stolen, countless lives impacted. Miles facing overwhelming evidence, including Stella's forwarded texts and the damning dinner recording, was looking at serious time. 15, maybe 20 years. His startup? Pure fiction. A flashy website built on lies. But the real victory wasn't just his downfall. It was watching Stella meticulously box up every photo, every gift, every letter from Miles, labeling the box evidence with a grim sort of satisfaction before handing it over to the DA's office. It was seeing her walk back into Riverside High, head held high, and re-enroll in her AP classes. It was Delilah, quietly, carefully, putting my photos back into the empty frames on the living room wall, one by one, her hands trembling slightly. A silent apology, a fragile beginning. Our own path forward, Delilah's and mine, would require counseling, hard conversations, rebuilding trust brick by painful brick. But that morning, when Stella came downstairs early, holding an envelope Miles had asked her to mail last week, more fraudulent investment paperwork, she didn't hide it. She slid it across the kitchen table towards me. "Thought you might want this for the evidence file," she said, a hint of her old self in her eyes. I looked at the envelope, then at her, seeing not the manipulated victim, but the resilient young woman emerging. "Want to deliver it to the investigators together?" I asked. A genuine smile spread across her face, the first real one I'd seen in weeks. "Yeah," she breathed. "Can we get ice cream after?" The request, so simple, so normal, felt monumental. a step back towards us, towards the kind of boring, wonderful family stuff Miles could only dream about from his cell.